Hey guys, I hope you're doing great today. This is our chapter number 7 in which we are going to learn about Azure Storage Services. Guys, this is our AZ-900 fundamentals course in which we are going to cover all the fundamentals and key services of Azure Cloud. In the previous chapter, we discussed about Azure networking services, and also before that chapter, we discussed about Azure compute services. In Azure Networking Services, we discussed about Azure Virtual Network, Express Route, VPN gateways, site to site VPNs, and so on. So, in Azure Storage Services, we are going to have a quick look on the storage services that are offered by Azure. So, let's get started and make sure that you have subscribed DevOps Molvi. Let's begin with today's headline, and it is about Azure Storage. This is an overview. This is the conclusion of Azure Storage, which is a cloud based service from Microsoft Azure platform, and it offers highly available, secure, durable, scalable, and redundant storage solutions. Now, there are a number of terms that are being used here. Number one is highly available. It means that you will find your data every time. If you are going to use Microsoft Azure storage, it is highly available. It means that our data should be replicated across multiple availability zones to make it highly available. For instance, if one zone goes fail, the other will have our data, and we are not going to lose our customers. We are not going to lose our data. It means that Azure storage is highly available. And number two is security. Azure storage is secure, it is durable, and durability means that there is no data loss or data corruption. Okay, high availability means that data would be available every time. Secure means that our data would be secure from the threats and malicious attempts. Number three is durable, which means that our data is not going to be lost or corrupted. And scalable means that with the increase in the data, I would get more storage. If my data is like, suppose, 10 GB, and tomorrow it is going to be 20 GB, and then 50, and then 1 terabyte, and my storage account will get that specific amount of storage that I need on the spot. So it is also redundant. Now, what is redundant? It means that multiple copies of my data would be there on multiple physical locations, on multiple regions, and also in multiple availability zones. Now, it means that my data is highly redundant. And in case of any disaster, natural disaster, power failure, internet outage, one of the region is going to serve my data, and that is known as redundancy. It means that having multiple copies of your data across multiple regions and availability zones. So, highly available, it means that I am going to get my data, I am able to access my data every time. It is high availability. Secure, it means that my data would be secure from any external threats. And durable, it means that my data would never be lost and it is never be corrupted. It is always durable. And scalable means that with the increase of data, my storage account will grow. Okay, it is scalable. And redundant means that I have multiple copies of my data on multiple physical locations like regions and availability zones. So these are interchangeable terms that are most frequently used in storage: high available, secure, durable, and scalable, and redundant. So, what is Azure Storage? Azure Storage is designed to handle massive amounts of data and traffic, ensuring high availability and performance. It means that we can store up to thousands of terabytes of data on Azure. Data is replicated across multiple storage nodes and regions to ensure durability and also redundancy. Azure Storage also provides protection against hardware failures, with data encryption. Now, security is also covered since our data is encrypted, and there would be no data loss, there would be no data corruption, and our storage would be highly available because Azure Storage also provides protection against the hardware failures. Now, what is redundancy? We have discussed it earlier, but redundancy in simple words means to have, yeah, or to store multiple copies of our data. For instance, I have one folder with my sensitive data and I upload it into my Azure storage account. Now, Azure will copy data folder across multiple availability zones across two regions, let's suppose. Okay. Now, in two availability zones and two regions, it means that if one goes fail, I will get the copy of my data from the other region or from the other availability zones. So, Azure copies the data across multiple availability zones and regions. It is known as redundancy, and it ensures high availability and data durability in failures or outage. In case of disaster, if one region goes down, I would be able to access my data from other region which is up and running. Now, this is important from exam point of view. Redundancy types in Azure, and I have given the example of each type in Azure. The first one is, and the simple one, locally redundant storage on one availability zone. It is a single data center. And the second is geo-redundant storage. It involves that our data would be on multiple regions, okay? US East and US West, okay? So it means geo-redundant storage copies our data across multiple regions. Read access geo-redundant storage, and it means that we will have read-only access in case of any power outage or in case of any network failure. We still are able to have a read-only access to our data. Now, that is why it is known as read access geo-redundant storage. Zone redundant storage, it means that our data would be in multiple availability zones. Geo-zone redundant storage, it is highly available, most durable, and most redundant storage type in Azure because it is geo-zone redundant storage. Combines geographical locations, means there would be two regions and there would be two or more availability zones in geo-zone redundant storage. There would be multiple zones and multiple regions. And finally, read access geozone redundant storage. It also offers us read-only access to the secondary region and zone in case of any power outage, network outage, or natural disaster. So we are going to use any of these depending on the nature of data. If I want to have it highly available every time, I would recommend that we must have read access geozone redundant storage. In case of any issues, our data would be still available with read-only access. So these are the types, and the most basic one is LRS, locally redundant storage. It means that our data would be on a single node, on a single storage point, in a single availability zone, and in a single region. So this would be more cheaper locally redundant storage. Now in the exams, you are going to be asked according to the scenarios, and you have to recommend the best storage solution possible. All right, guys, now we have actually 5 types of Azure storage services. 3 are here and 2 are here. The first type is Blob storage. And this is the most common type of Azure storage service, and it is a massively scalable object store for text and binary data. For instance, if I have any text or binary data, I can use the Blob storage. And the number 2 is disk storage, which is also common, which allows data to be persistently stored and accessed from an attack virtual hard disk, just like we use hard disk in our computers and we store our data on these disks. Similarly, we can use disk storage in Azure Storage to store our data on persistent disks. And the third one is file storage, which is used to provide fully managed file shares in the cloud, and we can share those files with our teams using Azure File Storage Service. The number fourth is queue storage, which is a service for storing large quantities of messages. So, if I have any notification service and I want to store large number of messages, I can use queue storage for storing large quantities of messages. Number 5 is table storage for database, a NoSQL service for storing semi-structured data, and it is known as table storage. So, blob storage for binary and text data, disk storage, just like we normally use disks to store our data. Number third is file storage, which is a fully managed file shares in the cloud, and queue storage for storing large queues of messages. And number fifth is table storage, which is used for semi-structured data. So these are actually 5 types of Azure storages. After that, guys, we have Azure Migrate, and it is a service by Azure which is used to migrate from an on-prem environment to the cloud. Let's suppose I am getting out of storage space on my on-prem data center and I want to move my data to Azure storage, then I am going to use Azure Migrate, which is a service to migrate, to transfer massive amounts of data from my on-prem data center to Azure cloud. And also, we can migrate our physical data to the cloud. We can use Migrate service, and Azure Migrate functions as a hub to help us manage the assessment and migration of our on-prem data center to Azure. If I want to migrate my on-prem data, then I am going to use the Azure Migrate service, which helps in such kind of migrations. And the last one is Azure Data Box. Azure Data Box is a physical migration service. Okay, now we have to keep that in mind that it involves physical migration, and it helps to transfer large amount of data in a quick, inexpensive, and reliable way. Data box storage device would be shipped to us, and it has a maximum usable storage capacity of 80 terabytes. Okay, if I want to have that kind of data and I want to physically migrate, then I'm going to use Azure Data Box. And we can order the data box device via the Azure portal to import or export data from Azure. I've never used this kind of service before, but we should have a knowledge and we should know from exam perspective that Azure Data Box is a physical migration service for our data. For instance, if I have 80 terabytes of data and I want to move it to Azure, then I am going to use the Azure Data Box, and that Data Box device can be ordered from Azure portal. Once I have this device, I have to copy my data to Azure Data Box device, and then that data would be transferred, would be copied to my Azure account in my storage account, and this is a physical migration service known as Data Box. And we can see here, if I can find it, Azure Data Box, and yes, Azure Data Box, yes, this is here, and no Azure Data Box to display. And this is Azure Data Box service, which is used for large scale data transfer to Azure with Azure Data Box. Okay, and also we have Azure Storage, where we can create a storage account here. This is a storage account, and you can see that we can have up to 500 terabytes of data in the cloud. We can create a storage account, and this storage account is able to store up to 500 terabytes of data on Azure, which is a massive amount of data. And also, guys, last service is Azure Migrate. Let's see if we have it in here. Yes, we have Azure Migrate, and it is also used for migration from our on-prem data center to the Azure cloud. We can use this service. So that was a little overview of Azure storage, and we discussed high availability, security, durability, redundancy, and every storage type like locally redundant storage, geozone, read-only geozone. So all these services have been covered as well. And also we discussed about 5 different storage types like blob storage, queue storage, file storage, okay, and disk storage, etc. So that's it for today, guys. I hope that you have a better understanding of the Azure storage service on Azure. I will see you in the next chapter, chapter number 8 of our AZ-900 fundamentals course. If you still have any confusion or question, feel free to ask me in the comments. I will see you in the next chapter. Make sure to just subscribe. DevOps Molvi. Have a good one. Bye.